are live with the iHemp Hour. My name is Dave Craybill. I'm with iHemp Michigan. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp in Michigan. iHemp Michigan advocates for wellness in people, and the planet through hemp, and it begins with the farmer. Mike Brennan with the Michigan Marijuana Report. You have a little bit of news to share with us.
I do, a little bit. Hot off the press, digitally pressed, that is. We have a report that came out that shows that the Michigan marijuana jobs in 2020 doubled. Of course, when you're starting from basically zero, it's pretty easy to have that kind of doubling. So a lot of folks now are getting employed, and I was mentioning before we started, there's still 300 or 400 licenses in the works for provisioning centers for growers. It's really exploding here in the state with adult use, and could approach $2 billion in adult use sales this year. Another thing that came up is that besides the jobs doubling, we've got some news coming out of Washington that actually the NORML and several other groups have now said very frankly to Joe Biden, hey, we helped get you elected. Now we want you to follow through and decriminalize adult use marijuana, which I think a number of people really want. That would certainly make it a lot simpler for folks with banking and dealing with the IRS and all the rest. So we'll wait and see if that's actually going to transpire. But since the Democrats have the keys to the kingdom for the next 2 years, that was one of their campaign promises, and now we'll find out if that's actually going to happen. And then on 420 Post, that's my video show, my streaming video show. We did part 2 of our taking a look at the lab situation where the MRA has come out with new rules for how to test for mold in your cannabis, which of course could carry over into hemp as well. And so they have the new rules in place, but we brought in a couple of the labs that didn't participate in the, getting the new rules promulgated. And they had their comments about, not sure about the science on this. It seemed like kind of a rush job, but so be it, right? So there you have it.
So, Mike, are they finding, do you think these new rules are going to cause more issues then with the dispensaries being able to find a safe product to put out? What was some of the comments made there?
Well, it's going to cost more money. They changed the batch method. I'm not a tester, but I mean, they're using a plate method where they put your crop out on the plate for 3 days and they see if something grows on it, see if the mold grows. But one of the things they all said was mold actually is everywhere all the time. And they're just questioning whether the new MRA rules are a bit too sensitive and, whether they should be really more closely evaluated, because it all came to pass really quickly. And the other labs are a little, they're allowed to grandfather in the tests they were doing before, but and they can do these new tests, but again, it gets back to it's more expensive to do it, takes longer. Is it a good thing? I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but certainly if folks want to see the arguments or hear the arguments, that's available on my website at 420post.com.
Yeah, I know Varieties talked about that. They have some specialized equipment that looks at water. It has to do with the water content as well. And, I don't remember the terminology, but, I remember them discussing that. That's maybe something we should dive into again in the near future.
Well, it may play, like Mike said, it may play into the smokable market at some point in time. It probably will. I'm sure that's going to come under somebody's watchful eye at some point in time. So.
Well, I mean, cannabis is cannabis is cannabis. I mean, hemp is cannabis, but I mean, it's different. I mean, obviously the THC situation is real critical with hemp and versus the cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, that people smoke, that they want a very high THC level. So that's one difference. But I mean, the whole mold thing, it's the same plant. You're going to have issues
No
with
one
mold.
wants mold in their bud.
Nobody wants mold. Yes, I mean that's what we were saying
Mold.
yesterday. It's
Yeah.
not. Especially if you're going to consume it into your body. You certainly don't want those mold. So
Yeah.
well, however you consume it.
So I actually got some quite a bit of news to cover today this morning, so we'll kind of work quick through it. Maybe we'll put some at the end of the show too. But the first thing coming up is the deadlines for the USDA programs. Next month, the 15th is the deadline to get your crop insurance, and that includes if you're looking at taking hemp crop insurance this year. If you have crop insurance already, talk to your agent you have. If not, I know that Scott did a nice segment on that about how to get crop insurance. And if you go to the Expo website, you can go to Scott's booth, or Colville Insurance, and then he has a real nice explanation of all those programs there. So good way to look at that. Also, remember this year you have to register with USDA where you plant your crops. So if you haven't done that yet, you might want to take a little time while it's kind of before you get busy with stuff, and call the office, talk to them. It'll be a pretty simple process to get set up, but there are a few things they have to do to make sure that you're ready to certify in June. So maybe take a little time in the off time right now season to do that. Also, PPP loans. If you're interested in those loans, they have come available again, and the deadline is March for that as well. So talk to your current lender, see if they do that if you're interested in that. I know that they've changed the rules a little bit so that now farmers with Schedule F can now apply and be able to get some assistance there. So a little bit of help with the Ken. Some big news that I meant to talk about last week and forgot to get it on the air was there is a new bill that's been introduced, HR 841, would make all hemp and all its cannabinoids except THC subject to all the other FDA regulations as for any other dietary supplements. The bill is called the Hemp and Hemp Derivatives CBD Consumer Protection and Market Stabilization Act of 2021. It is identical to HR 8179, which was introduced in the last Congress. It's introduced again by Democrat Kurt Schrader and Virginia Republican Morgan Griffith, with 5 Republicans and 12 Democrat co-sponsors. Last year, there was 30 sponsors on that bill. The bill would simply make hemp subject to all other regulations as for any other dietary supplement, subject to new dietary ingredients, NDI findings, good manufacturing practices, and labeling and marketing provisions. On the US Hemp Roundtable, they've got a portal. You can go there if you don't know who to contact. Of course, ours would be Bill Heisinger from my area, the coalition is of 18 groups supporting this bill, including US Hemp Roundtable, American Herbal Products, and a whole list of them you can find on the site there. So anyway, so real important there. Make sure that we do contact them and ask for support of our congressman. We need to get this through so that we can increase and get the market going. Once this gets into play, I'm sure there'll be a lot of other people that will be coming into the market and need the products that we all want to grow. Let's see, Hemplet, Make Hemp Day, Hemp Day is a free webinar that's put on, and it's going to be on March the 3rd. It's usually from noon until 1, and that would be on Wednesday. It'd be a Wednesday. Justin Swanson is going to talk, and also Joe Lime. Joe is the Midwest Hemp Council Committee for Hemp Economics. He's going to update everybody on what's going on in that area. So that'll be a good one there. If you're interested again in signing up for the Midwest Hemp Database, that's available. Phil Abedi from the U.S. Illinois Extension, commercial ag educator. He's pleased to announce that the Midwest Hemp Database for 2020 report is currently available online. You go to go.illinois.edu/MHDR report, and you can get onto that and find out that's a really good report. It lists all the varieties they have, where they test it. Also, if you want to sign up again for the 2021, it's going to continue. And again, if you'll go to that website, also you can go to illinois.edu/hemp database, and you can sign up if you'd like to participate in this year. What they did is you got a reduced price on your samples that you sent into the laboratories, and they use, I thought it was in their Rock Laboratories, I believe was one.
Yeah, in Wisconsin.
And, I can't remember how the other one was. So anyway, so a really good database there. Also, don't forget about the other one that we talked about last week, and I'll bring that up at the end of the show. Foster Brown Todd has a lot of things coming up every month almost, but the next one coming up is March 18th from 1 until 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Banking, credit card processing, and financial transaction in the hemp industry. Certainly one, if you're doing any business, probably a good one to sit in on that. They put out great information. If you have, if you want to go out and travel and do a lot of the shows that are going on, they had one in Iowa last week. And Dave, do you have the one? Or let me share my screen. I've got it.
Show me.
Yeah, show me. I got it. I just got to get to it. I always got to remember how to do all this. Share the screen. Well, I thought I had it. I guess I'll have to go to it. So much for, well, there it is. You have it. Why can I hate it when that thing goes? There we go.
There you go.
So show me kind of, there we go. Am I sharing it now?
Yes, sir.
We are.
Yep. So we got, it's March 1st in Jefferson City, Missouri. It's $110 entry fee. Members are free. And
there's a virtual path for $35.
Yep. We're getting down to, also, we have a little agreement with them, reciprocity, if you want to call it, that for anybody that attends the virtual one, and I'm assuming the real one too, if you get to let them know you're with iHemp Michigan, that we get a little love back from them for sharing out, helping to put it out. So help support iHemp Michigan. That's what it does there too. This is some of the people they got, conference speakers they've got going on. iHemp Michigan, and I've been invited to talk a little bit on a panel there. So I don't know if they've got my lovely face up there yet or not. Do they really?
Yeah.
I saw it last week when they were
There's
going.
Jamie. Keep going. There's Greg Wilson.
There you are. Wow, look
guy.
at that handsome guy. Yeah.
There he is.
15 seconds of fame right there.
Yep, there you go.
Rachel and Hunter.
No more.
All our hemp buddies are going to be there.
All our hemp friends, right? So, so anyways, that's live and virtual. March 1st is when that is. So should be a good show. They should have going on there for everybody. So we can stop sharing now. And then Nebraska is having one also on February 23rd to the 25th, so a little closer. But right now, with all the stuff going on out there, I'm not sure what's going on with that conference, but maybe they're not getting it as bad as Texas is getting down there. So, but they've got a good lineup also of speakers. But talking about lineup of speakers that we have, man, we've got a great one today. We have Terry Morgan. Terry is the Vice President of Operations and Production for the International Hemp .com. International Hemp is an exclusive licensor of 2 industrial hemp varieties of continental Europe origin bred by the oldest hemp institute in the world, the Institute of Natural Fibers and Medicinal Plants in Poznan, Poland. Through this international partnership and their alignment with agricultural professionals and organizations, they're able to import, propagate, and manage all aspects of the seed production to provide U.S. farmers with the highest quality, competitive price, high yielding, AOSCA and AECD certified industrial hemp seed in North America. And they've got quite a lineup of also their peak. They've got Derek Morgan as their president, Rachel Johnson is their chief operating officer, and Eric Singler is the director of communications. So, but today Terry's with us. And Terry, when we were talking earlier, I'd like you to give a little background of how you got to this position and what you've done with the Department of Agriculture in Colorado. So Terry, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. I'm happy to be here. Try not to talk too much, but you can keep me on track. It'd be great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, where do I want to start? How far back should I go? Well, I guess I
go back to what you used to do with Colorado. I mean, you can go back farther than that. You can go back to as far as you want to here, but
yeah.
A lot of people will find that Colorado Department of Agriculture pretty interesting.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, my background has been in plant breeding and basically research my whole career. I have a degree in agronomy from Colorado State. And so I got started in the seed industry, in the vegetable seed industry right out of college. I worked in wheat research through college, and basically always, I live in the Midwest, Northeast Kansas, worked on a farm, went to college, and I was always kind of drawn to agriculture and nature, and that was kind of where I wanted to be, was out in fields or out in the hills. So, long story short, I've had a career working for several vegetable seed companies. I've bred sweet corn for probably 25, 28 years, either as an assistant breeder or as a breeder, working for smaller companies where I could be a breeder and do a little more. But working in small companies, you get involved with everything, wear a lot of hats, anything from the research, the seed production, keeping inbred straight, whatever. So I've had a real good time, a fun career in agriculture. I was always interested in hemp, even as a kid. I mean, in the Missouri River bottomlands, it was all over Northeast Kansas, and I think most people learn right away that that's called ditchweed and kapot for a good reason. So, I mean, I was definitely a teenager in Northeast Kansas seeing that. So, I've lived in Vermont, Southern California, and Kansas, Colorado. I came to Colorado to go to college, and have a BS degree in agronomy from there, and plant pathology. And so a whole career in several row crops and vegetable seed crops, and started working in hemp in December of 15. I was hired by the Colorado Department of Agriculture as their certified hemp seed specialist. Colorado was kind of out in front of most states, and the legislature at that point, anyway, they had their hemp program, and they also had the certified seed. They saw certified seed as the pathway to helping growers to be protected, and a lot of people, I mean, when you're kind of that whole hemp thing, you're building the plane as you're flying it idea. There are a lot of stuff happened in the early days with just kind of like you had to make a decision, and decisions were made. And I was there for 3.5 years. I worked in the hemp program. So I basically worked with an attorney who was the attorney on the project, and the hemp program manager. And I was the plant science guy trying to put things together, make it work. We really were not on the national scene. It was more just on the Colorado scene, but we did have a little bit of, also working with other states and whatnot. But basically it was just developing rules that worked for the growers in Colorado, tried to work with the growers. And I was never huge on regulation. I can tell you that. And I saw a lot of that in the government situation. And I always tried to read the rules that were being written and try to bring it down to earth. And, is this something that people can work with? And I like to think that I did a good job for the growers of Colorado. It was a lot of extension work, basically, and getting people up to the speed on what the regulations are. And just because rules are written, it doesn't mean anyone actually understands the intention of the rule or how they're met or implied. So, it was a lot of that kind of work. And then on the good side of it, the stuff that I enjoyed was getting out in the field. I was responsible for trying to bring in varieties to put into the Colorado Certified Seed Program. And Colorado decided, true hemp by legal definition, we had to have hemp tested around the state. So I basically was making big circles around Colorado for 3 summers with 5 trial locations, and then taking the notes, making sure the varieties were as described, which was, none of these varieties were developed in Colorado. So the descriptions, all that took a little bit of work to kind of dial that in, and what you're seeing in specific environments. And then I was responsible for the THC testing, collecting the samples to take to the lab anyway. So that was that job. And, I wanted to get involved in private industry. I was never a career state guy kind of thing. And I basically came to this industry, and I wanted to see where it was going. I had an opportunity to work in a private sector, doing seed production, doing marketing. And I jumped at the opportunity, left the Department of Ag a year ago, April, I guess, and worked for the predecessor company of this company for I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months or something like that. That company kind of crashed and burned and was resurrected into what we are today, which is International Hemp. And I've come back on board here to production and try to help out anywhere I can as we get in front of as many growers as we can, talk about what we do. And we do have the exclusive rights to production for 2 Polish varieties, as we said, the Bialobrzeskie for fiber and grain, and then a Henola variety for grain specifically. So now we produce seed, we import seed, and we're trying to do everything right and be the supplier of choice for anyone growing hemp in this emerging market.
You ready to want me to share your PowerPoint? Talk
Sure.
about varieties?
Sure, I just have a couple things to talk about. Be happy to answer a lot of questions too. So
Yeah.
Well, that's coming up. I'm just curious. Your hemp seeds. What part of the world did you get those from, and how did they perform in Colorado? Or are you going to cover that in the slide presentation?
it's not really in the slides, but I can tell you that there's been seed production in Colorado a couple years ago on both of these varieties, and the varieties work actually quite well in intensive agricultural situations with irrigation and high plant population and pushing for yield. So the varieties themselves were developed at, I guess, around 53 degrees north latitude in Poland. And we are producing seed in the United States. We produced seed in the past in the United States, and we're also producing seed in Poland and Germany. But we're moving our production as much as possible in the short term to the U.S. For all the right reasons. It's just it makes a lot of sense to grow your seed here and have a little more control over it, and that's certainly our intention going forward.
And you're cutting your carbon footprint, by eliminating all that transportation, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So Terry, do you grow that seed just here or just in Colorado, or do you do it in other states as well? Are you growing it, or just in Colorado?
Well, as far as growing the seed for seed production purposes, in the past, it was a Colorado company, so we did grow in Colorado. Moving forward, I expect to, hit some northern tier states where the varieties should be a little more adapted and, make it more of a grain commodity, which you have to do. Irrigated agriculture in Colorado is it's pretty expensive, and the margins are pretty slim on hemp seed. So you have to lower your costs. I mean, that's the name of the game, right? Lower your costs so you can pass along the savings and do things at scale and get as big as you can get for the economies of scale.
Does the altitude play into it? Because clearly Colorado is at a much higher altitude than, say, Michigan or Wisconsin or Indiana. Does that have any impact on the seed?
Well, I think the season for seed production, you need a long season because you need the grain to mature properly for seed quality. So, as far as altitude goes, I mean, I think hemp is very adaptable. I mean, I've seen hemp growing at 7,000 feet, no problem. I've seen, medical cannabis grows at 9,000 feet. So, as far as that goes, they weren't developed at high altitude. Colorado, the Eastern Plains are a great place to grow hemp. It's just that, the cost of production and a lot of that is dryland wheat acreage, or else you have irrigated land that usually is devoted to corn. So you really have to see, what kind of money can be made, but it all comes back to infrastructure and, is there money to be made for the grower? Can they actually grow a crop and sell the crop and be profitable at it? So I don't know if I would see Colorado as a big grain or fiber producer going forward compared to a lot of the other states that have lower input costs. And, that's kind of to be determined. Colorado, of course, has low humidity, so that's good for seed quality, and it'd be good for grain quality too for food grade hemp.
So Terry, I want to go back to something that you said earlier on. You talked about it's hard for me to think about this looking out my window with 2 feet of snow and sub-zero weather we're having, but it's going to change. You talked about sweet corn. So eventually we're all going to be planting something out there. So do you have a variety that you like in the sweet corn?
You know, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if the sweet corns that I was involved with developing are still even in the marketplace, but yeah, I used to have some favorites. I mean, I worked for a small company in Olathe, Mesa Maize, and you know, our number one customer was Stokes out of Canada. So you know, anything from Stokes that was a sugary enhanced kind, roadside stand kind of corn, you know, we're involved. I was involved in that, you know, hands on.
Right.
So at Harris Garden, Trend, Johnny's, you know, all the small vegetable seed companies, roadside stand stuff, Pennsylvania companies. I, you know, I was involved with developing Montauk, a variety which, you know, hybrid that I think is still stellar. I wouldn't want to eat any other corn. You know, when you eat whether it's strawberries or sweet corn, you don't stand in line for a crop like that, and you know, you taste it all the time, and you're always dealing with it. It's pretty hard to eat anything, and you certainly wouldn't want to eat it unless you grew it and picked it yourself. So, but there was a white that I really liked, and sugar pearl and Montauk for a bicolor. If I were growing sweet corn, I could get my hands on those, and I didn't want to. You know, I knew I could keep them from getting pollinated by some of the shrunken two types. I still prefer those for you know, go out to the garden, grab a ear of corn, and eat it fresh.
So you mentioned something about pollination there too. That's a good thing. So how do you prevent that? You know, cross pollination is a big issue, but it's got to be even a bigger issue when you're trying to grow seed that way and have it be pure. So how do
So,
you handle
so
that?
yeah, so in hemp seed, I mean, the AOSCA certification, which is the Association of Official Seed Certifying Agencies, they write up their rules and their standards, and then that's, you know, the United States, Canada, and I think 7 other countries. I think maybe 42, 43 states are all part of that. So AOSCA recognizes AOSCA, but then you can have local standards that you set differently. But for hemp, you know, your core seed that you kind of keep your varieties maintained as pure as you can requires isolation differences, you know. So like the core foundation seed, you need a 3-mile radius, I believe, 3 miles from any other hemp, you know, to keep that foundation seed going. And then it's about, I think for registered, it's 1.6 miles, maybe the next class down. And then certified, I think, is about 0.6 of a mile from other hemp or hemp of the same variety or class. And you're not allowed to grow in the same field that any hemp was grown in 4 or 5 years, depending on the class of seed you're producing. So there's rigorous standards like that to, you know, to not allow other pollen to blow in. Anybody that's been in a hemp field knows that there's so much pollen load in that hemp field that you start thinking you need to be 3 miles away from other sources. It gets a little ridiculous, but it is what it is. And then also with these monoecious types that we have, you know, they require intensive roguing, and that's why the seed price is what it is on most of these. There's always going to be an element of, you know, you have to keep your variety pure, and the standards are written, you know, to have a variety, it has to be, it's kind of like an inbred wine, if you think of it that way, or a wheat variety, just a tabletop variety. If you're selling seed, it has to be 95% the same in the bag and in the grower's field. So you're allowed 5% other. But in seed production, you have these all male types and the monoecious types that have to be rogued out. And you're only allowed in a registered or a certified field. I think you're allowed 100 out of 10,000 males. So I mean, we've had in the past. I mean, we've run. I figure one guy for 3 or 4 acres, and you know, you could be out there for a month, depending on how clean the seed lot is that you're starting from. So I'm
that's
hoping to get
interesting.
that down to a couple weeks.
You talk about roguing out the males, but with seed, you need the males, right? So you just taking out the males that don't match that variety because you need the pollination, right, to make seed.
Yeah, so the monoecious type, I mean, it's all male and female on every plant. That's why, I mean, it
Oh,
was
okay.
first developed, I think the French pushed it because they went to 0.2 and they went to the monoecious type historically in hemp in Europe. And they did that for 2 reasons. One was so that every plant produces grain, right? instead of half the plants producing grain. So and that's
Okay.
why you would get a higher yield, especially if you're under a stress condition where, you know, you're competing for moisture or something. You don't want 50% of the plants in the field not doing anything for you. And then also on the fiber side, on these fiber varieties, the males would die a good 10 or 14 days ahead of the females, and then they would be harder to handle, you know, and the fiber quality would be different than the other fiber off of the females. So that's the whole reason the industry originally went to the monoecious type. So every plant in the field has male and female flowers on every plant, and then you have, depending on the variety and what class of seed you're starting with and how tight the genetics actually are, you get these all male types that you have to remove in order to get your field certification from AOSCA and the crop improvement in your area where you're growing seed at.
So they send somebody out from that agency then to check the field and make sure that during the growing season?
Absolutely. Yeah. For the monoecious types, they need to be out there 3 times. So they usually come out at the beginning of flowering because that's when it's the most important. You know, you're only allowed, I think, 2 out of 1,000 plants male plants shedding pollen while the females are receptive. So it works out pretty good because generally the all male types kind of bolt and they're easy to spot. And they come on sooner. So if you're out there aggressively on the front end, you should be able to, you know, keep it clean and not run into any issues. So, you know, the goal is, of course, to have start from really good base seed that you can grow out, take very good care of, and have minimal row gain. And that's where we're going with it.
Is much of the seed done, is any of it done indoors as well? Or is it mostly just done outdoors because of cost?
Yeah, it's all outdoors. I mean, it's large scale agriculture. This stuff is outdoors. It's not saying you couldn't do stuff indoors if you needed to, but it doesn't make a lot of sense on the scale.
Yeah, we do in Michigan here, we grow a lot of sweet corn. So, you know, the farmers are kind of used to that situation there. But I'm wondering, so how were you able to control the distance? You said, you know, 3 miles on one certification kind and different what do I say, different mileage or different area. So how did you
Right.
control that around you to be able to have other growers not grow?
Yeah, I mean, that could be an issue, and it certainly is a problem for people that are doing all female grows, of course. I think that in the early days in Colorado, it wasn't that hard to find isolation, and especially just for certified seed, where you only needed less than a mile, less than a mile in every direction. Yeah.
I hope when you look out to go to other states to do that, you take a look at Michigan to see if we can somehow be part of that process for you. So on that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just basically comes down to people that are experienced growers and have grown seed and they have the infrastructure and they're set up to handle it, you know, A to Z. Is there's certainly been a learning curve and a lot of failures, and you know, if anything I've learned is that, you know, you need to be with experienced seed growers. So
What makes these varieties unique?
what makes them unique?
Yeah, why did you select these Polish varieties?
Well, the Henola variety was it was a kind of a brand new variety at the time, and it is just a yield monster compared to other varieties in the marketplace. The Polish Institute they were very aggressive in wanting to have partnerships with U.S. companies, so they were kind of out in front of a lot of the other companies. I think a lot of you know, other companies and varieties, they kind of sat on the sidelines to let the, you know, foolish Americans go through their hiccups, kind of thing, with the emerging market, where the Polish varieties, they were kind of a little more aggressive on pushing their varieties also. But the Henola variety for grain, I mean, it basically makes grain from your ankles up to over your head, and it has real high yield potential. So that was why we wanted that in particular. And the Bialobrzeskie was about their best dual purpose and fiber variety that they have. It's you know, still maintaining seed on. that's how we came up to those two varieties. And we're certainly interested in other varieties from them, and also representing other varieties from other breeders.
Let me ask you, do you know, or can you even guess, of the total agricultural output in Colorado, how much would be hemp? I mean, in terms of 5%, 10%, do you have any idea?
Oh, total agricultural output?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very little. I mean, even when they were at 80,000 acres registered, that's a drop in the bucket compared to the acres in corn and wheat in Colorado.
Mm.
I mean, there's probably more acres in a couple of counties in Colorado than there is in the whole country of Uruguay, for instance. You look at emerging markets and other places where cannabis or hemp would be grown.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big state. It's a big state.
Sure.
If you just look at the northeast corner, I-25 and I-70, and you just take that quadrant, from Denver to say Cheyenne and over to Kansas. I mean, the acreage right there that could be used for any crop is it's huge. So
Yeah.
I mean, 80,000 acres, even when it was registered, and probably half of that was actually planted, was not very much.
Hmm.
So there's a little
But
bit of grain and a little bit of fiber.
Are a lot of farmers in Colorado taking a serious look at hemp or not?
The first couple of years, I mean, Colorado and Kentucky, the first couple of years, they were kind of the only game in town. And, companies in CBD, they I think they did pretty well for a couple of years there. And then as other states came online, and everybody knows the story of the biomass and the crashing prices and the whole CBD, and there really wasn't the regulation then that there is now either. So I think it'll always be there. Most of the people I know of, there's been a lot of hurt. There's been a lot of hurt. A lot of people have been hurt with CBD. A lot of companies have come and gone. A lot of growers have put in facilities, and then the investors walked out. It's been a roller coaster in that side of it. And I saw that going on at the Department of Ag, and I mean, as lucrative as it looked and as attractive as it was, I couldn't believe how many times I hear people, lawsuits and just ugliness going on with bad business deals, and people think they're going to make $100,000 an acre, and all this. So I like the grain and the fiber deal. I like the idea of millions of acres of hemp out there for good reason with good end products. And I see as a huge market for the seed companies to be in. And, all we really need to do is have more uses for the plant, and some of these manufacturing companies actually come online and start using hemp so that there is some markets for the growers, and everybody has to make money through the whole supply chain.
Gary, you talked a little bit about harvesting. Now, I know for the grain, at least how we harvested the grain that I grew, we waited to the bottom part of that head. Those seeds there started to turn brown or split a little bit. So we harvested a little bit on the early side. What phase of the growing do you harvest for the seed? Are you like way near the end of it that you try to harvest for the seed, or how do you harvest? What time frame do you harvest the seed?
Yeah, I think seed harvest is seed harvest is going to be just like you would for high quality grain. I mean, if you're looking at food quality grain, it'd be the same with the seed harvest. You kind of have to make a call because the indeterminate growth, what's still going to mature, what's fallen off the plant, and where am I at on maturity on the majority of the grain. Because either one of these varieties for grain, I mean, if you just leave them out there until the plants are dead brown, you're going to lose most of your yield. So you definitely need to be out there as soon as you can get through it without ripping up your combine, and higher moisture, harvest that seed off and get it on air and dry it down to say 8 or 9% directly. That's the way you're going to have high quality seed and the highest yields. And I think that's the same as if you're going for grain.
So we got the picture up here of the two different varieties. So, and I'm going to butcher this name, Bialobrzeskie.
Yeah. It's,
Is that
I
close?
say Bialobrzeskie. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but
Okay.
I've seen it spelled differently in by the Polish and here as well. So yeah,
So
so
is there
Henola on
actually
the
grain
left.
in that? Is there actually grain in those top heads too, or not?
Oh yeah, yep,
Or- okay.
yep. Yeah, so I mean, if you're going for fiber, it's all about what do you want, the fine fiber, and you want to cut it before it has viable seed, viable grain, or are you going for dual purpose? I think at the end of the day, dual purpose is going to have to be what makes sense for the growers, because everybody's going to want to use the whole plant. And I mean, if you're growing thousands of acres for fiber, you might as well get a grain crop off of it too. And if you're growing thousands of acres for grain, there's going to be some stubble there that you can bale up and work with.
Mhm.
So I like the idea of dual purpose varieties. Um, and these particular trials, is a one-time shot, but I mean, these varieties have done pretty good across the northern tier, like we would expect them to. We are working with people in other parts of the country and just trying to really dial in, find the right planting spot if you're going to be planting these varieties. Not one variety is going to be the golden bullet for everything, the silver bullet. So you're going to have to do on-farm experiments and see what works for you and how you're set up to handle it and process it.
What about harvest equipment? Do we have the right harvest equipment available around? Is it normal farm equipment that people can use to harvest this? Is there some specialty stuff they need?
I think that the more growers try to make stuff fit the equipment that they already have, the better off they'll be. So, I've seen things worked. I've read about things. I've also seen just kind of normal equipment adapted for hemp. But hemp's hard on equipment, and that's a fact. So it all depends on when you harvest it. I don't know if you need some of the specialty equipment that's out there. I know people that are real happy with stripper headers, for instance, where they're going for grain and cannabinoids, and it looks good. Come back in and cut the plant later for fiber. But our seed production was just done with normal combines.
Hmm. So this Henola looks really thick in the head. What kind of yield difference do you see between Henola for grain and your dual crop?
Yeah, I like these pictures because they look pretty good. I think here, even if you look at them very closely, the stalks are still probably bigger than they would be. I would probably go with a higher plant density on both of these for seed production or for production, fiber or grain. So they are a little bit different than they might look if they had a higher population. But I mean, the Henola, it's probably, well, the next slide has the data from this one spot location. I don't know if you want to put that up. So this is a university trial, right? And it's a one environment, 1 year, one location, and this is just what they found out. So it's not gospel by any means, and I'll be the first to admit that. But we had a good trial and a good start. Is the way I like to look at it. And all you guys are lined up in my yield column there with your pictures. So I think that in this particular trial, Henola went over 1,700 pounds of grain,
Yep.
and the Bialobrzeskie was around 1,000. So.
Oh yeah, wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, and that just shows that it was grown well, and it was harvested when it needed to be harvested to see the maximum grain potential. So that was nice. I mean, it's nice to come out on top. What a grower's going to see in a real farming situation over a lot of acres average is kind of yet to be determined. We had some growers reported, probably over 1,500 pounds on a larger field setting. So, it's been really positive so far. And the Bialobrzeskie for fiber is something I'm still trying to dial in. How many pounds, how many bales can you get on a fiber variety if it's grown at high population in the right environment at the right planting date? And is it going to be a viable crop for farmers and for the processing plants?
What
this
is
was
the
a good start.
KWT grams per thousand? What does that represent?
Kernel weight,
Is
kernel
that
weight,
kernel weight?
1,000 kernel weight. Yeah. So that's like your test,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
Mhm.
Kernel weight. So, I mean, most of the Henola varieties of seed that we're selling are, I like to use about 35,000 seed per pound as a ballpark figure. The individual lots can be, 30, 31, 32,000 up to maybe 38,000 seed per pound. We try to be below 40,000 seed per pound no matter what. And the Bialobrzeskie seems to have a little bit bigger of a grain. Overall, it's probably in the 32 to 36,000 in most lots. But there are exceptions to that. I mean, some of the lots, if they're not cleaned the same way, you can have it all depends on how they process the seed and how big of a cut you take on a gravity table is what it comes down to, or how high your air is up on your combine when you're combining it to begin with.
What about pricing? What are we looking at properly?
Uh, you know, our prices are right now, we're very competitively priced. And I mean, if somebody brings us a huge order, we're not going to be undersold. We're going to compete head to head with anyone else selling hemp grain or fiber seed in the marketplace. Our prices are $4 a pound right now. And I would say for Henola, if you're going for grain, you probably want to be around, somewhere between 22, 25 pounds per acre. If you're growing for fiber, probably more like 50, 55 pounds per acre. Yeah.
We have a question from the website. He abbreviated a lot. I like this. B Lab might be a good pronunciation for you for your Bialobrzeskie. I'll let you guys worry about that. Is it a fiber varietal that you're confident in, or you're looking for a higher yielding dual crop?
The question is, am I confident in Bialobrzeskie as a dual crop?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. That variety's been around in Poland since the late 60s. So it's nothing brand new. It's got a long track record of being a consistent year in and year out performer with a high grain yield and high fiber yield. There's been really limited studies done on that anywhere, really. It's hard to find information, but it was the best thing that the Polish Institute had. And I'd love to see strip trials. And I think this year, for the first time, some growers are going to do enough acreage with other varieties head to head in farm trials. So we should have a really good idea of how we do compete. But it's not just the pounds and the bales in the field. It's also how's it going to match the processing product? What is the end product? And what is the recovery after processing? That's going to be the stuff that's to be dialed in.
One of the topics that has come up, when someone's trying to do a dual or tri-crop variety, you're not optimizing for what the need is. If a fiber project has a very specific need, do we have to go to a specific fiber variety to do that?
I would say so. If you're looking for fine fiber, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing right now. Everyone in the fiber game is pretty much low-hanging fruit, going for herd. And, I don't know all the answers to any of that or what all these fiber guys are actually doing. But I think most people are going to mature plants and they're not cutting them real young. So, I mean, if you're going for fine fiber and you're cutting it young, you don't have a grain crop. So I think, yeah, if the market actually gets to that point where they want fine fabric material, it may change with that. Yeah. I think the two markets I see, other than human consumption for grain or animal feed, that coming on board, that's going to make for a reason to grow hemp. And then if there's blow and insulation, if that ever takes off, building trades, the herd, what is the herd market actually out there? What can it bear? There's a lot of people around the country that are excited about fiber, and it'll be interesting to see where everybody shakes out 3-5 years from now.
We have one more question from the website. What kind of value can you attribute to the certification, the AOSCA OECD?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like gospel. The next slide, I mean, I think I go over a little bit of that stuff, but you know, if you're not buying a certified variety and you're in the grain or fiber market, it just makes no sense at all, because otherwise, if you're not using a certified variety, you know, all you're really doing is you're getting unknown grain. You know, it's kind of like having a pedigree dog or a mutt you pick up at the pound, you know, and you do have the regulatory concerns, you know, is it going to be legal? And that's just a burden that growers shouldn't be faced with, especially if you're only going for grain and fiber.
Yeah.
So I believe in seed quality. I've been in the seed industry forever, and I don't know why anyone would just go buy cheap seed that doesn't have a good paper trail on the seed, you know. And I think the consumers and the processors, eventually they're going to have their specs dialed in to where, you know, you're going to have a variety that fits their specs.
Yeah.
If you're going to go to scale.
Mm.
And you know, that may be several varieties, but it's kind of like the old bin run wheat thing. You know, I mean, for years growers kept their wheat seed, and you know, there's a lot of issues with growers keeping their seed and replanting it, even in wheat. And you know, some guys could take that and re-clean it, brown bag it, whatever, and you know, do a good quality job with it and have decent seed quality. So there are people that have decent seed quality, but it's just, I don't think they have the best varieties, or they have a mix of varieties.
Terry, when you sell your seed, and I can't remember what they call it, but basically it's an agreement between the purchaser and the supplier of the seed that they're not going to keep that seed over and they're not going to replant it and do that kind of thing. Do you have that agreement with your sales as well?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we have to have an agreement like that to honor our contract with the Polish Institute, and honestly, any company that is in the genetics game that is providing varieties, you know, they're not going to allow you to keep your seed and replant it. They're not going to allow you to use it for breeding. That's just kind of modern agriculture. I mean, a lot of other crops are hybrids where you wouldn't save your seed, you wouldn't get the same thing back anyway. But I mean, especially if you start looking at scale, where processors think they're going to need 2 million pounds of seed in a couple of years, you're always going to want new varieties, because no varieties are going to last forever. And you know, the only reason there's so few hemp varieties out there is because of all the regulation. But now with the United States coming on board and seed companies coming into it, there's going to be a lot more breeding going on, and varieties aren't going to last for 50 years like this Polish variety that's been around forever. You know, varieties should change. I mean, that's the name of the game, whether it's hybrid corn or whatever it is. You know, you have to have a stellar variety to last probably a decade anymore. So the only way you can fund research, which you know ultimately helps the growers, for everybody to be profitable. If there's no money back to a seed company, then there's no money for research, and the growers are going to be stuck with the same varieties forever. You know? So
Terry, are you able to help find markets for, so if somebody buys your seed, are you also able to help them sell that and after they grow it, either for the fiber or for the grain at this time?
you know, that's something that's really exciting to us, because we realize that we're not going to grow as a company if we can't kind of connect the dots. And you know, we have to be more creative than, hey, buy our seed. You know, there's no point in a grower buying seed and growing a hemp crop if they don't have an outlet for the final crop. So you know, we talk to a lot of people, and we're certainly trying to get into that situation where we would sell seed and we would have offtake agreements for the crops. And you know, anybody that's has interest in that for grain or for fiber out there in the world, you know, please do contact us. We are all about that.
Do you have a minimum size order?
On our seed,
Yes.
you know, we sell in currently we're selling in 35 and 40-pound bags, and then we have some miscellaneous size tote bags that could be anywhere from 200 to 500 pounds. Most of our bags are set up for about 15 acres or so. I mean, most of our bags are about 880 pounds. Well, but we have other sizes as well, 1,000-pound, whatever. And anything anybody wants, we would make it work. But we don't want to get down below a 35-pound bag.
Mhm.
Any issues with transportation, shipping the seed?
You guys just went blank on me. I don't know. I lost you. I don't know.
But you
I'm
can still
talking
hear
to
us?
Really?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
just
good.
talking to a blank
Okay.
screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't had personally any issues with that, but I know growers are still required to, kind of follow all the protocols in transportation. And I think federal government at this point, I don't think is doing a very good job of getting the information out in individual states. It seems kind of ridiculous that somebody with a truckload of grain would have an issue, or a truckload of bales of straw would have an issue, but I'm sure there's still problems out there.
I
One
haven't
more
heard too
question.
many this year, so that's been good, but
Is anyone growing your varieties in Michigan currently?
We had some sales into Michigan last year, and some decent results. I think some of it got planted kind of on the late side and still did fairly well. Nothing on a large scale, but a few growers with smaller fields, and we're certainly interested in seeing that grow.
Do you have any samples of the herd from your variety to work with?
Yeah, we have some like little showcases on that, and we can certainly get some. There are still some bales laying around from last year that we could probably get our hands on.
Okay.
so Terry, if people want to get a hold of you, do we have does the next slide have your contact? There we go.
Does.
Yeah, it should have. Yeah.
Yep,
There you
Terry Moran.
All right.
All right, well, it's very cool.
Well, Terry, a lot of great information today. Thanks for sharing all that. Any last minute questions come up anywhere on anything?
No.
Nope. All right. Well, Terry, again, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to help share the information to everybody on this. This is certainly where we believe this is going, as well as with hemp and fiber. And we know from conversations we've had with businesses that are, planning and are coming to Michigan and are here now, that this is going to be a crop that we're going to need to be able to supply here. So we know that's happening. So
Yeah,
we look
I've
forward
enjoyed it, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Appreciate
to
it.
working with you in the future, that's for sure. So as we go along, so.
Is it time for the hemper?
It's close. I've got a couple things I want to share with everybody, and then we'll get into that. Victory Hemp, we talked about them a while ago. They did a campaign through Stewart to raise funds to be able to help Mark Vollmer out. And just want to let you know that they were able to raise that $176,000. They just took care of that last week. So very nice job. Anybody that did donate to that, you're going to get a little return on your money, 6%. Which is better than sitting in the bank right now, for sure. So Terry brought it up, and we'll talk about animal feed. And the Hemp Feed Coalition submits the first ingredient application in the United States for hemp to be federally approved as feed for ingredient for poultry. A nice article they have on that, and we'll get it posted onto the website. But excited that that's moving forward, and going to be able to. This is a slow process, but we're going to make it work. That's for sure. So that'll be one good test there. We haven't really talked about the market in a while. I'm going to bring up just to let everybody know where prices are for that. So this is supplied to us from Jacobson's, which is now Fast something, Dave? Who bought them?
I'm sorry, what was it?
Fast, is it Fast Track that they bought? Somebody bought out Jacobson's.
I'm not going to be able to.
Okay, now we'll talk about that later then. But anyways, they supplied us with some pricing, and so hemp biomass, it's pretty much in that mid 40 range per pound of CBD percentage on that. The certified organic biomass is a little bit more. It's in the mid 80s, mid 50s, almost 60 cents. The crude extract is $300 a kilogram. The full spectrum distillate is $545 for a kilogram. The broad spectrum distillate is $932.50 per kilogram on that. The CBD isolate is $735. Hemp flour pretty much is around that 185, 200, 150, depending on the quality. Organic flour is a little bit of premium. It's about $212. The hemp for grain has stayed pretty steady. It's about 50 cents a pound, 52. The organic grain is about $1.12. And the hemp fiber is about 9 cents a pound. Is what that's going for in the market. So anybody that may be interested in this, the USDA is seeking members for their advisory committee on urban agriculture. The committee is a 12-person committee and will advise the Secretary of Agriculture on developments of policies and outreach relating to urban, indoor, and other emerging agriculture production practices, as well as identifying barriers to urban agriculture. Interested individuals or organizations may nominate themselves or others by March 5th. So there's a deadline coming up on this. And you can find more information about that on the USDA website on that. And let's see what else we got. Oh, and the other data research that's going on is Climacell. We've got information on the website on that. I would, if I was a grower, I would probably sign up for both of those, just to be able to submit information and to be able to help further the industry with collecting the data for growing. That's all the Midwest Hemp Database, and then this one as well. And with that, we are on time, aren't we? Okay. Terry, this is what everybody really watches the show for. So this is why we do this. So
we saved it till last, so they have to watch all the other stuff.
Yeah. So my mom really loves pancakes. So I found a recipe, and this again is out of the my favorite little book on hemp recipes. Just for pancakes. So you do 1 cup of whole wheat pastry flour, a tablespoon of aluminum-free baking powder, a pinch of sea salt, 3/4 to a cup of vanilla soy milk or rice milk, 1 tablespoon lightly covered hemp seed oil or avocado oil, they do say here, 1 tablespoon unbellished vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of shelled hemp seeds. I'd go a little heavier on that just because you want the benefit of that. Pretty much you just stir everything in there. You make pancakes like you normally make pancakes, heat that grill up, put a little water on to make sure it dances, and that's about the right temperature. And we'll have this information up on the website. So, well,
and you could put on top of that, from Sutton Weed Farm, you could put some of that maple syrup.
Absolutely.
Hempy's award winner.
Yeah.
One of these.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Speaking of that, see what I have my Hempy's bowl here, Blaine?
Yeah, I see that. Oh, and you're not sharing again. So that's kind of today's recipe for that. Next week's show, going to be another interesting one. We have Jeff Kostuit with Hemp Genetics International is going to be on. He's going to talk a little bit about grain and growing that. And then we have Jen Nelson's going to be on from our Mid-Michigan Hemp Supply, one of our sponsors for this show. She's going to talk about clones and seedlings and all good things there. So believe it or not, folks, it's only about 45 days to the opening of baseball. So the snow is going to go. We're going to get something here. We may have a little cold temperatures, but baseball is going to start.
A little cold temperatures. Okay. Yeah.
It
hasn't been above freezing now for about 3 weeks.
I'm just waiting for March Madness to start with the basketball. So that's where I'm at. Although, Mike, your team's doing pretty well this year.
Yeah, not bad. U of M, they play Rutgers, I think, tonight. So here in Ann Arbor, but nobody can go to the games. We just watch on TV.
Numbers are all coming down. Well, this is going to break loose soon, I hope.
That's it. It is going to. So look forward to some exciting things that we're planning for the summer. If we can roll and get out, we're going to plan a lot of fun things for everybody this summer. So we are. So thanks everybody for the show today and sticking around. And
thanks, Derek.
We'll see you
all right.
Good to see you, Mike.
Guys.
You too. All right. Take care. See you all next week.
All right.